One particular thing I remember about Ben Shapiro, who is, he was talking about the African American community, and he's responding to one of the questions from the audience, and he explained to me why crime rates are higher, particularly higher in the African American community, and why is there more violence, and why is there less people, those who are employed, and things like that. And I had sort of read sociology and I was introduced to the entire concept of sociology. And I thought like that was the point where I thought like okay, no. Ben Shapiro like he is also wrong in some parts.
Shapiro is Harvard graduate, eh?
Yeah, he's a lawyer.
Yeah, he's a lawyer, and so which is why Shapiro ko tyo certain episodes है उसको टक शो को certain episodesहरू चाहिँ म विद्यार्थीलाई I have recommended them just to as a reference of like how to think like a lawyer. Okay, मलाई I although I may not agree with some of the things he says, I do like the way he uses the rules of logic to persuade people. Right? Of course there are fallacies, right? Yeah. Always. But who can spot these fallacies is someone who can spot what makes a good logical argument, and there's no logical or illogical argument. Okay? It's a spectrum,
yeah.
I know. And when you are a student of logic, when you are a student of any logical discipline or a student of science, including legal science, and as you get familiar with the with the texts in law and the various perspectives in law, even if you talk about like the Roe v. Wade. I read the entire judgment.
Oh, sir.
And I have to say, I do agree with some of the opinions given by the judges, the majority opinion. So, okay, nothing is outrightly logical or illogical. Okay, it's a spectrum. Ani त्यो exercise मा चाहिँ you should be able to spot prejudices, biases, and fallacies. Okay. And that, how do you get better at that? You just by starting that logical exercise, and for a beginner who wants to know what a good lawyer sounds like at any court, त्यस्तो मामलामा चाहिँ I do suggest one of the suggestions ma Ben Shapiro dinchu ke just the way he thinks.
So but then one specific point which I like to point out you talk about like the logical don't you think there's a difference between like practically logic and fallacy like differentiate and theoretically like for example if I am looking at a video and this one fallacy spot I can replay that video 10 times and then I can figure out like oh okay this is this is AST generalization or this is something, and there on practical terms, and you being a lawyer and you've practiced for so long and you're really good at it, and how do you like spot a fallacious argument when it's happening in the court, like on the go?
I go by a formula. For example, I'll relate to what I would do right now as a coach for moot courts. Just say and because I teach international law, so my international law example into so someone is making an argument about international law. Chahe त्यो कुनै पनि argument होस्. For example, right now the issue is like Russia versus Ukraine. It's all over the place, which will not go into detail about it. But let's say, okay, what's an aggression, because that's the term being thrown around everywhere, right? Like the media is using it, the lawyers are using it, anyone and everyone is using it, right? But then that's a legal term. Aggression is a legal term. And aggression has a legal connotation and it has a general connotation. For example, if I tell you someone just walks in with weapons, or let's say someone just starts walking in and starts shouting at us, I can look at the person and say that that person is being aggressive, right? So that's the right. So media ma चाहिँ aggression भन्ने शब्द गर्दाखेरि okay, Russia is sending its tanks and troops in, and Putin is making all of these intimidating and hostile gestures. There's so much of destruction and damage in the territory of Ukraine. Hence aggression bhanera bujcha ni. But that's not what aggression is in international law, right? So how do I spot a fallacy is by first I look at the law itself, right? And you म चाहिँ यो गर्छु के in international law, I look at the definition. And law ma, and since we are getting into law, right? So law has a very specific characterization of things, right? जस्तै genocide को पनि आफ्नो specific characterization छ, torture को आफ्नो specific characterization छ, sexual violence भित्र पनि let's say rape as a form of sexual violence has its own characterization, that certain elements need to be met for that to be characterized as a rape. Of course that's legally, but then you when you apply it to a case, then you would have to substantiate it on the basis of facts, right?
Or evidences.
Bridge गर्ने के हो, law of evidence र interpretation ले हो, right? And what I would do is like, first I would go to the definition, then I would go to law ma exceptions haru huncha, right? For example, homicide has certain defenses. For example, self-defense. International law ma pani त्यही छ के, if a country is invading another's territory, and invasion is a very broad term. For example, you do humanitarian intervention bhन्छ नि, right? That's also an invasion.
Yeah.
But the countries say that whoever is doing that HI is saying that, well, it's a justified invasion.
Justified. Right.
So what is that justification? That justification is an exception, right? अनि homicide मा जस्तै self defense को exception हुन्छ नि, international law मा पनि humanitarian intervention is so called ground of exception, okay? As self defense,
humanitarian intervention pani it's not like u gareko chaina, right? It's not been like exactly defined.
So I was absolutely coming to that. So first thing I'll look at the definition, then I will look at the exceptions, right? Then I will look at the procedure, right? So you cannot just claim a ground for humanitarian intervention and walk into someone else's territory without consent, right? It needs authorization, right? So त्यो अथराइजेसन कहाँबाट आउनुपर्छ, सेक्युरिटी काउन्सिलबाट आउनुपर्छ कि चाहिँ ह्युम्यानिटेरियन इन्टरभेन्सन गर्नु अगाडि नै आउनुपर्छ, द्याट हेज टु इज सेक्युरिटी काउन्सिल आफैले स्याङ्सन गरेको अथवा आफैले रिजनल अर्गनाइजेसन्स अथवा ग्रुप अफ स्टेट्सहरूले गरेको होइन, इट कुड बी एनी अफ दिज. तर चाहे त्यो इन्टरभेन्सन गर्नु अगाडि होस् अथवा इन्टरभेन्सन भइरहेको बेलामा होस्, यु हेभ टु गेट द अथराइजेसन अफ सेक्युरिटी काउन्सिल, राइट?
हजुर.
And so that's the procedure. I'm just giving an example. You know? So law ko procedural requirements haru pani huncha. The fourth thing people don't really look at is another part of the procedural requirements, which is dealing with the other party. Right? For example, international relations or international law ma, before you take hostile actions, you have to engage in negotiations and mediations, right, with your counterpart with whom you are having a conflict. Okay, conflict धेरै खालको हुन्छ, and conflict is inevitable, right? So त्यति बेलामा you have to engage in a so-called civilized practice, that is you have to seek peaceful resolution of conflicts, right, by mediation, arbitration, negotiation, first of all, the classic, you know. So I look at these elements, I look at these के भन्ने ingredients of a recipe, के मेरो लागि logic एउटा recipe हो, and if you're specifically talking about legal logic, using law to make a law or to use a law, right? Then I would look at what would be the basic elements or the ingredients of this recipe, okay? Right? International law ma yo, okay? The rule, the exceptions, the interpretation, the procedure, and the requirement of peaceful resolution of dispute. यो पाँचवटा कुरा हेर्छु के म, ओके? अनि त्यसपछि what I do is, before I start even saying I can spot fallacies in something, है, यो basic elements लाई लिएर whatever is the issue of contention, है, त्यो एरियामा I would want to be well read. I would want to know the popular opinions of people who have been working in that area. I would want to know various aspects of the opinion. I would want to know diverse opinions. I would want to know supporting opinions, partially supporting opinions, dissenting opinions, completely ignored opinions, opinions which have not even surfaced.
Know the agenda from all sides.
Diverse opinions. For example, international law, what has been a very neglected set of opinions, the opinions of the free world ones, recently freed world, so-called third world countries. I know. हाम्रो perspective in international law, a few decades भयो, it started gaining more traction. So यी सब diversity of opinions as much as possible पढिसकेपछि मात्र I would make even a preliminary opinion on something. Okay, on the basis of that, I would be able to compare the opinions of others and would even start to say I can spot the fallacies, as you've said. Okay, for example, I can spot fallacies in humanitarian law, human rights, to a certain extent, refugee law. Right? I could probably not spot fallacies in as of yet. Let's say private international law. All right. So that's what I mean. Okay. So I think too, it's about. In fact, I could have just summarized this in 2 or 3 words. Number one, you should know the methodology of investigation, scientific investigation. त्यसलाई के भन्छ? There's a word for that in science.
Scientific investigation. What is it called?
Yeah, asking the right questions.
Okay, asking the right questions.
Right.
Wait, what is it called?
Take a guess.
I was a very bad science student. No clue. What would that be?
That's called scientific inquiry. Yeah,
wow.
Simple. The scientific inquiry.
Okay.
Scientific inquiry is just knowing the right questions. So agi मैले भन्ने नि, okay. So these are the 5 ingredients of knowing a good argument in international law. We took the example of aggression, So
right.
What would I ask? I would ask, okay, what's the definition of aggression? That's the first question I would ask.
Right.
Second, I would ask, is there any defense to aggression? Third, who authorizes aggression त नभनौँ, use of force.
Use of force. Okay.
Lawful use of force. त्यो भएन भने aggression हुन्छ के, बुझ्यौ नि? अनि fourth of us, was there an effort to engage in peaceful settlement of dispute or not?
De-escalate.
Right.
Right.
So यस्ता खालका questions-हरु, so these are the and what is this? Asking this question is what's scientific inquiry. के?
That does make it very easy to understand the entire thing. Asking the right
so that's the first thing, eh? The first thing I would do is I would engage in scientific inquiry, right? The second thing I would do is read.
That's obviously very important.
Yes.
Because unless you're like unzani kunai subject matter ma,
Yeah.
you do not know what's happening or unzani what are the variables, elements, parameters of it. It gets very hard,
So त्यही भएर त नि हामीलाई as law students, as lawyers, teachers of law, we are expected to know all the laws, okay? Right? Which is why it's impossible to know all the law and to be able to explain the law in its full appreciation, okay? बुझ्यौ नि? It's not possible because तिमीले यो scientific inquiry र reading गरेकै हुँदैन, although you might know some nitty-gritties of the law. For example, अहिलेको जुन यो citizenship bill को बारेमा छ, there are so many issues included in it.
Right.
First of all, even to begin with, whether it's discriminatory or not, right? To answer, okay, that's the main scientific inquiry. Second question you would need to ask is, okay, what do you mean by gender discrimination? First of all. Second, third of all, what is gender? Right? And then you would have to look at, okay, what are the forms of gender discrimination and what forms of gender discrimination have taken place here? And there's the whole issue of nationality and statelessness. I know there is an मान्छेहरुले citizenship नपाएको. Okay, यी कन्सेप्टहरु बुझ्नु पर्छ पहिला, and then and not just like the terminologies के, अनि त्यो word of mouth बाट हैन के, यस्तो यो tea talk conversation बाट हैन. That would only enable you to pursue the conversation, right? Or to claim that you are a good citizen, in fact, because a good citizen सबै थाहा नभए पनि आफ्नो समसामयिक इस्युहरुमा एक किसिमको रुचि राख्ने, डिस्कसन गर्ने, जस्टिस पर्स्यु गर्ने, फेयरनेस पर्स्यु गर्ने, त्यो हो नि, हैन?
हजुर.
Not someone who knows everything, but then your area ma to know substantially, you would need to know basics, you concept or jun मैले भने, right? अब हेर्नुस्, अब someone might walk up to you and say that, okay, Syed, you are a law student, so अहिले यो citizenship मा bill मा तपाईको के राय छ? Scientific inquiry and reading. Right. But then you are we are expected to know all of these, okay?
Third, like, despite that, in practical terms, like, it would not be possible for any individual to know everything about
Yeah.
even like specialists or to go into super deep specialization and even they have to continuously keep reading neither for them to like even retain information. There are things that you would go on to forget eventually, and
Yeah.
you just have to keep that practice, continue the practice of retaining information by reading it again and things like
Yeah,
that.
and COVID is not helping. Yeah. The brain fog is real. Like,
Very much.
yeah, immediately COVID pachi, I took a few classes and I forgot the name of the case that I've been teaching for 10 years.
Oh,
एकचोटि मैले मेरो बहिनीको नाम पनि बिर्सेको थिएँ.
that happens with me too. अस्ति भर्खर हाम्रो एक्जाम भयो होइन, अनि यसमा त लेख्नु पर्यो नि. But then पहिला चाहिँ के हुन्थ्यो भन्दाखेरि क्लास 12 को बोर्ड एक्जामिनेसनमा एडिसनल सिटमा पनि आफ्नो नाम लेख्नु पर्थ्यो. अनि लास्ट मोमेन्टमा मैले पेपर थपेको थिएँ अनि मैले आफ्नो नामै बिर्सेँ क्या एकछिनको लागि. And I'm just like, leave it. I'll just finish this first and त्यसपछि म नाम लेख्न आउँछु आफ्नो फिर्ता.
Yeah, त्यो I think it's got to do with again scientific inquiry and reading. So I'm like, disclaimer, I'm not an expert, but त्यो sympathetic nervous system र parasympathetic nervous system को कुरा होला. Like if you're probability is that if you're someone who you sure that you know it, okay? You can recall it, right? But then if you can't, then your brain is in sympathetic nervous system, okay? बुझ्यौ नि त्यो फ्लाइट or flight मोडमा हुन्छ के. Too much of cortisol and that's just hindering your cognition के, त्यो larger part of the अनि त्यो parasympathetic nervous system मा switch गर्नुपर्छ भनेर I saw it in one of the podcasts हैन. Joe Rogan के थियो त्यो. Yeah, it was Joe Rogan podcast. I don't remember exactly which one because I consumed so much in like parts के. That's another problem we have ni, I'll come to it alikati later, but yeah, like I saw it in a podcast. I did not read it, so I don't know the basic differences between sympathetic and parasympathetic, just a basic, the two impulsive and fight mode ma bhako belama you cannot even recall information that you generally would have, okay? For example, your sister's name or your name, and which is why you are so I also remember, okay, त्यो 10 को exam दिन गएको बेलामा he said that the first thing you do when you get your question paper is pencil अगाडि राख, पेपर नहेर हैन, त्यसलाई गरेर राख अनि त्यसपछि take a long breath, okay? You know what, त्यो podcastमा it was said that breathing exercise is the most proven way of switching from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, that's actually true. Like we always negate breathing. Like we think of like all sort of problems and getting anxious at time, and we feel like there shall be. It's the simple solution. The no party.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't work, Sometimes it doesn't work because one breath is not enough. If you concentrated breath so that's like, which is why we have therapists. Instantly we wouldn't need therapists. Therapy pani like guaranteed that it's going to work, or it might be a temporary fix. There might be a deep rooted problem. There's so much like we might even want to talk about anxiety. There's so many things that make us anxious. जसले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ I have sensed, आफूमा अनि in so many people around me, including students, including people I look up to in some regards. Anxious भएको बेलामा they have behaved in a very different way. So yeah,
it's hard, let's say.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a challenging field.
Right. One particular thing that I want to get back to, let's not get into the facts of it. You said like when we were talking about international law, we talk about aggression. What I want to ask you is, since you're an expert, is international law biased towards country? Because the way I see it, for example, the US invasion of Iraq, and the current, let's deem it an invasion, since everybody does it, and the Russo-Ukrainian thing which is happening right now, the application of international law or the burden or guilt which is being put on the aggressive side, you know, is it different? Do you think that America got more absolution in its invasion of Iraq as compared to what Russia is getting at the moment?
Okay, I'll start from the sweeping question, international law has developed to become biased in favor of certain nations. Okay, मैले किन यसरी फ्रेज गरेँ भन्दाखेरि internationally, intentionally does it favor certain states? I don't think so. And again, यसको लागि I will turn to the law itself. Okay, right? So the way let's say जुन applicable laws हरू छ यसमा हैन, starting from the UN Charter or the General Assembly resolution which defines aggression, or the Rome Statute which also criminalizes aggression, or जति पनि अहिलेसम्म jurisprudence develop भएको छ on the law of aggression, they don't particularly favor any region or any state, right? Having said that, I think the response to the violations of these laws have been different. All right, because did Russia violate the law of aggression? Of course. Did US violate the law of aggression when it invaded Iraq? Of course. But the response to these violations have been different. बुझ्नुभयो नि? अनि यहाँनिर चाहिँ, which is why even in third year you discuss the concept of whether international law, because first of all it does not punish the wrongdoers, does not bring the wrongdoers चाहे त्यो individual होस् अथवा state होस् हैन, it does not bring these culprits to the kind of justice as compared to, let's say, what domestic law does to, let's say, a convict of a crime, right?
That's it.
So यस्तो खालको comparison हुन्छ के domestic law र international law मा, and it's not completely misplaced, right? There is a valid concern, okay? If there is a wrong, there should be punishment for it, right? And that punishment should be objective, right? Just there, determination of there has been a violation should be objective, and त्यो हिसाबमा चाहिँ the law is objective, I say, because it does not favor a particular region or a country. So the law is objective. The response has not been objective, right?
Right.
तर लमा त त्यो हुन पाउँदैन नि त, डोमेस्टिक लमा त भयो भने there becomes a national outcry, that okay, फलानुको छोरालाई अरेस्ट भएन, चार्ज सिट फाइल भएन, भए पनि the punishment was not severe. अनि त्यसपछि अर्कोलाई चाहिँ severe punishment भयो, so that's discrimination भनिन्छ नि हाम्रो चाहिँ, right? त्यही expectation international law सँग पनि त हुन्छ नि, because again the international law is there at the end of the day because we want to ensure peace and security, right? Right, just the our concern of criminal deterrence on a local or a national level is to make sure social harmony and the social security is maintained. त्यसै गरी international law सँग पनि हाम्रो ultimate expectation नै त्यही हो नि त. So if Russia is getting severe punishment, which it deserves, but US has been able to internationally, I'm saying internationally because domestically त्यहाँनेरि disciplinary actions हरू भएको छ. Of course, there's always room to argue if they have been proportionate to the crimes committed. But yeah, internationally त्यो खालको deterrence भएको छैन है against US, or for that matter the Saudi Arabian coalition, or for that matter the NATO coalitions. Right. Then of course it begs a question if the response has been biased, right? And it also begs a question then, who is the watchdog or who is the authority who judges these?
Right. Exactly.
Problem त्यहाँ, okay? Problem is कसले judge गर्छ कि त it's a enforcement body such as a Security Council, or it's a court, or it's a regional or a global court. Okay, and yahaneri चाहिँ question के छ भन्दाखेरि we believe that and हाम्रो देशमै पनि यो कुरा अफ लेट त एकदम चर्केर आएको छ, the question of independence of judiciary, right? We've started talking about who nominates these judges, who appoints these judges, how are they appointed, eligibility criteria र त्यो एक किसिमको जुन sanctity चाहिन्छ हैन of the position, त्यही खालको मान्छे त्यहाँ पुगिरहेछ भनेर who make sure that happens. We are questioning the objectivity in the selection of the judges, right? Their independence and impartiality. The judges are at international courts, they are not independent. They are either nominated by the nations themselves, or they are nominated by a commission or a body. Now these commissions or bodies themselves are primarily, I'm not saying exclusively, but primarily made of powerful nations. And yeah, so Security Council it's outrightly political.
Yeah,
right,
definitely
it's outrightly political. So that's the problem there. Okay, so the question next comes is can you change it? I don't see as such oileko existing international landscape ma
world order,
international world order ma I don't see that happening. Okay,
right,
बुझ्यौ नि
त्यसकै उसमा like हुन्छ नि a lot of people would like हुन्छ नि say that हुन्छ नि the Security Council is of no use because like हुन्छ नि they have not been able to any like substantial difference in terms of mitigating a crisis or a conflict. त्यसमा they have not been be able to successful. I also think that because Security Council has veto power, it also makes it effective. Okay?
Yes.
Because that's when it has the power of like enforcing thing. I mean, this brings me back like the enforcement part and to the Treaty of Versailles. Treaty of Versailles, tiger without teeth, it was regarded right because there was no enforcement mechanism. However, it did condemn war as a tool of foreign policy or national policy. Do you think like it's still a reality that international law while we have disregarded war, aggression, invasion and things like these as it's something which should not be done, but then there is no form of efficient enforcement mechanism?
Well, and if we are particularly talking about the Treaty of Versailles, I think you could argue that that did not concretely foresee the kind of enforcement mechanism that which should have been. We're talking about like hard enforcement mechanism, right?
Right.
But then that's how the international order is. Some states had suggested hard enforcement mechanisms. For example, Jun International Criminal Court ko idea which came to fruition in 1998. That was proposed way earlier in the 40s, even in going back right before the states met in Geneva to discuss what the new world order should look like. Met in Versailles to finalize and to adopt the treaty. त्यति बेलादेखि आएको कुरा हो हैन, but we should also look at the circumstances ruling at the time. Okay, the world had just emerged from the biggest humanitarian catastrophe that the world saw in forms of world wars. So त्यति बेलामा I think I'm not sure what's the best the states could have done, but they might make this argument that the best that in the world could have done, which incorporates the idea of what the world could have come to a consensus to, right? What the world could have agreed on are the basic sets of rules of international order. They concretize that in the form of the UN Charter. So the world did agree on this order is going to prevent most of the wars. Okay, and sachi bhanyo bhane हैन, the rationale of the UN is not pacifism.
Right.
Okay, it's not that.
Right.
Although you could justify the UN Charter on the basis of pacifism, त्यो भन्नु र UN Charter pacifist हो भन्नु separate कुरा हो है.
It's also put very well by the second or the third Secretary General, Dan something. He says the UN was not created to take humanity to heaven, but to save humanity from hell.
Most of the realists, for that matter, yes, and that's the thing, eh? So what they did agree on is that, well, what we can do is that we can avoid the humanitarian catastrophe, which spirals into a condition where states might use nuclear weapons and weapons of that scale and magnitude, and we destroy or demolish humanity. Okay? That's the के भन्ने त्यो the base of the UN Charter, right? All right. Okay. So you might argue that, but then there's an absolute prohibition on war. Well, no, it's a general prohibition, first of all, which is why I said it's not pacifist. Okay. Right? Pacifism says that war at any cost cannot be tolerated, cannot be justified. Right. Of course, there might be versions of pacifism. You know. For example, Oriental, alikati slightly different, you know, or maybe let's say the Mahabharata version of it, the Gita version of it. Would you call that pacifism? No, I would not call that pacifism. तर त्यसरी साइड चाहिँ भएको छ भनौँ न. तर UN Charter को version of prohibition on use of force, or the idea of international peace and security, is to prevent war, so that humanity can continue. All right. Which is why then they also, at the same time, they also completely prohibited genocide. Okay? Ani त्यहाँ हेर्नुस्, अब genocide को prohibition मा there is this beautiful principle of universal jurisdiction, that any if you don't hold your national accountable, then
you can. As a matter of fact, Nepal one of the colonels who is being in UK,
that he got acquitted.
But they
did invoke the idea that
the Rwanda one as well.
Prosecute yourself or be prosecuted somewhere else. That's the basic idea of extended jurisdiction. Universal jurisdiction would be that prosecute yourself, or you can be prosecuted anywhere in the world, even if the crime did not occur in someone else's territory.
So there's a distinction, a bit of distinction.
That's the idea of genocide convention. And a very few ideas have that ingrained idea of, you can be prosecuted anywhere in the world, even if the crime was not literally committed there, or it was not committed by your national, or the person was not your victim, basically, That's the idea of jurisdiction, right? It should be any of these. कि त तिम्रो टेरिटरीमा हुनु पर्यो, कि त तिम्रो नेसनलले गरे हुनु पर्यो, अथवा तिम्रो नेसनल भिक्टिम हुनु पर्यो. Otherwise, त्यो meaningful link कसरी establish गर्छौ भन न त्यो crime सँग.
Right.
But the idea of genocide is what? Genocide is a crime against humanity. So no matter where it has happened, if you allow, things like genocide, then ultimate consequence के हुन्छ? End of humanity huncha, okay?
Right.
That's actually crime against humanity. Ko basic philosophy is that if you keep on allowing this crime, it will spiral. In a few decades, it will spiral into this, situation of impunity where that might lead to the end of humanity.
Right. Okay. So it's seen something like criminal law, because criminal law is regarded as public.
Absolutely against the society.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Against your society.
Right.
So crime against humanity on a global scale, or humanity as a whole, okay? And in fact, you know what? Like, that's the whole idea of the UN Charter, is to prevent crimes against humanity. Okay? At the base of it. So it's not pacifist.
Okay.
Which is why UN Charter does not talk about animal rights.
True.
And in fact, while we're at it, the majority of international law does not talk about animals, or they don't talk about any other entity, because the whole of international law or legal system as a whole, basic oily pani idea is to protect human beings and humanity. Okay?
Emphasis on the human part.
The human part, which is why environment part, which is why nuclear weapons le environment like ke garcha bhanne kura, it's still discussed, it's still deterred on fragmented usma. Okay, so let's say a whole species goes extinct because of use of a weapon, right? that's still a crime, in international law. It's, for example, it's a crime under the Convention on Illicit Trade of Endangered Species. It's a crime under the Rio Declaration, होइन. तर के हो भने नि, होइन, अहिले पनि इन्टरनेसनल लले इफ the harm on human beings and civilians, they outweigh the harms on animals.
Right, we always take ourselves as the superior being sort
Yes.
of idea.
Anthropocentric. International law is anthropocentric.
When we talked about Rio Convention, it brings me to one particular rule, the distinction of East and West. And there is this idea of shared and differentiated responsibility. Right? How do you view it? Like, there's this Indian historian who has this very famous clip on YouTube, and I saw it, and this was a Rio Declaration part of it. And then he says, like, the West likes to scold us, but then they exempt themselves from, all the responsibilities. Exactly. So what's your idea on it? What's your take on it?
So, for example, let's talk about climate change. And Rio Declaration, it was meant to serve as the world's first commitment towards ecocentrism. जसको पनि बेस चाहिँ फेरि एन्थ्रोपोसेन्ट्रिजमै थियो, किनभने इन्भाइरोमेन्ट डिस्ट्रोय गर्यो भने अल्टिमेटली फेरि तिम्रो ह्याबिटाट डिस्ट्रक्सन हुने. Not protection of earth for its own sake, but protection of earth because earth is our mother. Okay.
Very selfish of us.
Anyways, you see, like, so which is why, bro, if you want to go to the Hobbian discussion, then that justifies why international law is discriminate. That justifies why law is how it is, including international law. But going back to the Rio Declaration, it was only meant to be the first commitment, okay, right, and the platform for action, अनि त्यसपछि जुन लेट्स से क्लाइमेट चेन्जको कुरा गर्दाखेरि फ्रेमवर्क कन्भेन्सन अन क्लाइमेट चेन्ज भयो, त्यहाँ पनि यो प्रिन्सिपल रिअफर्म भयो, होइन, कमन बट डिफ्रेन्सिएटेड रेस्पोन्सिबिलिटी. So यहाँनिर, so which means that there are common responsibilities and there are differentiated responsibilities. For example, common responsibilities भित्र के पर्छ? Prevention of climate change. Okay, it's a common responsibility. Okay. तर डिफ्रेन्सिएटेड रेस्पोन्सिबिलिटीमा के पर्छ भन्दाखेरि, जस्तै इफ यु आर द लार्जेस्ट or you are the top few largest contributors to the carbon emission in the world, then there is a differentiated responsibility to reduce that below the baseline. Okay, पहिला 1% थियो, अहिले 2% भयो, होइन. एन्ड यति वर्षसम्म चाहिँ तिम्रो कार्बन एमिसन यति पर्सेन्टले घटा भन्ने देयर इज अ सबैलाई फरक छ. लेट्स नट गो इन्टु द डिटेल्स, होइन. So that's a differentiated responsibility, किनभने let's say Nepal or any other country which is regarded as one of the least polluting countries, or pollution is the wrong word, जसको चाहिँ कार्बन फुटप्रिन्ट सबैभन्दा कम छ, होइन, नेसनल कार्बन. We don't have to take the measures on the same scale as America, China, India does do, होइन, for example. So that's a differentiated responsibility. Okay, and also that America, as the largest contributor to climate change, now has a responsibility to provide green compensation. मैले green भनेन, किनभने त green compensation to countries which are affected the most because of the climate change, including the Pacific Island countries and the countries which have mountainous ecosystems. So these are the two categories, right? The most climate vulnerable countries. So that's a differentiated responsibility, you know. The problem here is that the enforcement of this differentiated responsibility, it relies on legal commitment of these countries. होइन, किनभने कमन रेस्पोन्सिबिलिटीको कन्सेप्ट कहाँबाट आयो? मोरल कमिटमेन्टबाट आयो, होइन. हामीलाई मोरली फिल हुन्छ कि. अनि यो इन्डिभिजुअल लेभलदेखि लिएर ग्लोबल लेभलसम्म सबै खालको एक्टर्सहरूको रेस्पोन्सिबिलिटी हो यो, राइट. एउटा ह्युमन बिङदेखि लिएर एउटा होल ग्लोबको भनौँ न यो रेस्पोन्सिबिलिटी हो. Differentiated responsibility define गर्नुपर्छ फर्स्ट अफ अल, राइट, बिकज डिफ्रेन्सिएसन त हुनुपर्छ जुन मैले अगाडि भने राइट त्यो डिफ्रेन्सिएसन लेजिटिमाइज कहाँबाट हुन्छ लबाट हुन्छ होइन राइट सो यहाँनिर प्रब्लम भयो कि फर इक्जाम्पल ओबामा राटिफाइड द प्यारिस अग्रिमेन्ट होइन राटिफाइड नभनौँ हि साइन्ड इट इन्टु एक्जिक्युटिभ अर्डर एन्ड द्याट वाज अल्सो पास बाई द सेनेट and after that Trump he withdrew from it. In fact that was his election campaign right usko one of the election campaigns right so first it was a law then it ceased to be a law and then oile matra feri halsa le Biden has again expressed his commitment to resume that to
the Paris Accord
to be committed to the Paris Agreement again right problem त्यहाँ छ okay it's being used as this political chip and there's so much of politics into it less of a law and more of a politics त्यो problem भइदियो now अब अमेरिका जस्तो ठुलो पल्युटरले नै पनि उसको if their position has always been so inconsistent and we compare that with the के भन्छ त्यसलाई the deadline होइन Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I said by 2050. Elon Musk ले त कति 2030 कि 40 कहिले भनेको छ होइन
2030
right IPCC has well and you can rely on IPCC among others said that after 2050 then it might be reversible so we have a deadline of 2 decades or more just over 2 decades right and 2050 one and maybe we would have to reduce it substantially by 2045-40
right
त्यसपछि त गर्न पनि गाह्रो हुन्छ right but what are we doing right अनि त्यसको फेरि कस्तो छ भन्दा नि okay you see that okay त्यो carbon emission reduce गर but on the other hand we are encouraging the dirty capitalism okay there's capitalism itself is not dirty but there is a dirty side of capitalism pani and that the most obvious dirty capitalism is this mass production and mass dumping of materials right goods and products and त्यसलाई prevent गर्नको लागि WTO मा anti dumping law छ right it's not in force they say that it's in force but it's really not it's just mass production generating easy money and then the consequence of that is it's created this waste which will take a lot of time which will produce a lot of carbon dioxide release a lot of carbon dioxide in the air and including animal products right including animal products so that's not being enforced properly so तिम्रो climate change को law तबसम्म तिम्रो सक्सेसफुल हुनै सक्दैन जबसम्म तिम्रो यो इन्भेस्टमेन्ट र ट्रेडको प्रिन्सिपल्सहरू छ नि त्यो राम्ररी इन्फोर्स हुँदैन
okay
and again it goes to your initial question of international law enforcement there's a lot of propaganda lobbying and selectism and it's which is what the realists say there's two kinds of realists for the one camp which says that both of them agree that there's going to be the superpowers or potential superpowers who are the modern day imperialists. It's just imperialism redefined.
Right.
Yeah, that's that's what the new realists say. यो पुरानो colonial powers haru नै अहिलेको superpowers or potential superpowers yeah that's it there are so basically they say that there are the imperial nations and there are the colonizers and the colonized so we have become financially enslaved you see the condition of Sri Lanka it was financially enslaved right did its own leaders contribute to the situation? Of course, right? but you cannot ignore the overwhelming external factor of the the current deterioration of its economy, right? हाम्रो पनि त्यही हालत हुन्छ हेर, maybe not त्यो भने जस्तो ओभर्ट वेमा हुँदैन होइन, तर कोभर्टली त भइरहेको छैन नि. हाम्रो नेसनल प्रोडक्सन, वी आर एट अ डेफिसिट, हाम्रो ह्युज इम्पोर्ट होइन, रादर देन लाइक सस्टेनेन्समा जानुभन्दा अगाडि. सो एन्ड वाट वी हेभ बिकम अ डम्पिङ स्टेट है. सबै चिप माल कहीँ अरू नबिकेको मालहरू नेपालमा आएर डम्प हुने हो कि. We don't realize that होइन. हाम्रो लागि feel like it's a win-win situation होइन. The kind of lifestyle that we have today, the kind of lifestyle that lower middle class and middle class at particular can afford today is almost comparable to the lifestyle that the rich population of Nepal can achieve. Okay, maybe not in terms of like you cannot maybe not afford to like stay at Dwarka hotel ma बस्न पाउँदैन, but then you can afford a smartphone.
Everyone.
होइन, you have Wi-Fi, you have 3G. You can पहिला दसैँमा एकचोटि लुगा, which is why दसैँ होइन, दसैँमा लुगा धेरै बिक्ने कारणै त्यही हो नि कि दसैँ नै त हो लुगा किन्ने बेला. अब अहिले त्यस्तो छैन नि होइन. Why? Because Nepal has become a dumping ground for these mass produced clothes, garments, right? हामीलाई लागिरहेछ विन-विन सिचुएसन हो के. तर हाम्रो इकोनोमी, हाम्रो नेसनल आइडेन्टिटी, हाम्रो एन्भाइरोमेन्ट सबै डिस्ट्रोय भइरहेछ. वी आर स्टिल colonized. Our consumer behavior is influenced by the people sitting in the boardrooms of Amazon, होइन, right, or Doras for that matter.
Okay.
So we are still colonized, right? So it's not about whether international law is working or not. It's about what's at the base of human behavior, okay? And sadai there has been the colonizer and colonized, and we are the modern day colonized state.
It just gave me goosebumps when you said Nepal ko pani halat त्यस्तै हुन्छ, because I read this case study on Sri Lanka. 6 months ago the country was fine as in like they were afloat. They were not in a situation, they were in the situation where they could like get back to the position where they were in, or they could have went down. And foreign reserves are low. And also the Nepal, we had very low foreign reserves, and
exactly,
all the luxury goods were banned from
which import. Was a good move.
अनि त्यतिखेर नै पढेको थिएँ क्या, अनि मलाई त्यतिखेर पनि डर लागेको थियो क्या, मलाई नेपालकै हालत त्यस्तो भयो भने त के हुन्छ भनेर. But then recently we also took loan of some roughly like oddly 500 million from World Bank. How does loan affect us? Like we've already had so many loan from IMF, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and like all sort of places, right? Illegal situation in the current context of still having low foreign reserves and having so much outstanding debt,
right.
How does it affect us? Are we moving closer to Nepal becoming another Sri Lanka?
Well, yahaneri चाहिँ I digress है, किनभने I cannot elaborate on this because I'm not an expert. I'm neither an economist nor am I someone who has been closely following commercial law, okay, and how it can somehow regulate the purchasing and loaning scheme right now,
Right.
तर let's say यसले के गर्न सक्छ भन्दाखेरि, नम्बर 1 यसले okay, so when you so loan is a burden, all right, and I'm going to relate this with one of our initial discussions, the discussion of anxiety. There can be a national anxiety, where there is a burden on the state machinery, okay? Okay. So it's a very it's a very unconstructive के भन्ने situation, okay? You see, when you have loan, you are not able to take the kind of autonomous economic decisions that you would on the basis of your self-sustained economy. Okay.
Right.
Let me compare this with just what I know about Russia. Okay. So Russia is, well, why did the two sets of sanctions, 2014 र अनि हालसालैमा रसियामा लिभाइ भएको sanctionsहरू, why are they not working as effectively as projected, right? Is because Russia is a huge natural resource reserve. It's a country, but it's a natural resource reserve.
Right.
And they know this. And what this does is it gives them confidence, okay? And that confidence translates into good economic decisions. All right? अब यो सिचुएसनलाई लोनसँग कम्पेयर गरौँ त. So now तिमी कसैको अधीन छौ, okay? Okay, because there are terms and conditions to that loan, right? Which is how I am, which is why most of the countries, not just Nepal, but most of the countries default on their loans, which Russia also did, but let's say हाम्रो situation चाहिँ झन् डायर हुन्छ भन्ने कुरा हो, होइन? Is because you are not able to make sound financial decisions when you have that block of mind, okay? So त्यो national collective mind छ नि, including all the government actors, they cannot come up with this good economic plan, rescue plan for the nation, because त्यो खालको autonomy हुँदैन के उनीहरुसँग. Right? The confidence हुँदैन, त्यो autonomy हुँदैन. That's what loan does. सुरुमा चाहिँ loan seems like a good idea. Okay. I'll just compare this situation to, again, my very privileged experience as a student, as opposed to other students when I was doing masters abroad. Right? I'll just relate from what I know. So I got a scholarship. And a stipend, right? So के भयो भन्दाखेरि त्यति बेलामा 2016 मा I got a few very good offers, है. So मैले यो खासै पब्लिक गरेको छैन, गर्दिन्छु because I guess it's going to be a good lesson, हैन? I got an offer from University of Oxford. The first thing I did is I called my dad and I said, I got it. Yeah, I got it.
Oxford.
Yeah.
It's the Oxford, obviously.
Yeah. And he said, अरु कहीँ केही कुर्नु पर्दैन अब. Yeah, accept the offer. The catch was that it was going to cost me, it was a 10 months program. It was still going to cost me 20,000 pounds tuition fee. Ani त्यति बेलाको 2015 को cost of living was 17,000 something pounds, right? So 38,000 pounds त्यो भयो, and then अरु incidental cost हरु गर्दाखेरि 40,000 pounds हरु जस्तो त्यति बेलाको exchange rate 136 जस्तो थियो नेपालको. अहिले कति छ? It must be a lot. Yeah,
160.
Yeah. So yeah, it was still going to be a very expensive program for me. I was not employed. I was working completely voluntary at Kathmandu School of Law, and I was living in India. So yeah, I was basically an unemployed person. How was I going to pay back the money, right? What would I have to do? I would have to take a loan. Okay, your dad could have given you that money. Basically, your dad could have bailed you out. But you see, a person, I think every human being desires के भन्ने त्यसलाई
sort of liberty,
self-reliance. Okay. That's the word I'm looking at. In fact, that's what Nepalis also look. Yeah, every world in the nation in the world wants self-reliance, right? The idea of self-reliance. So that's what I wanted, right? So I believe that in order to be self-reliant and to gain that confidence in myself, which is self-reliance, right? I need to do this on my own. So I had that option, although not many people have that option. So what I did, I rejected the offer. Okay. Why? because I got an offer from an upcoming place which might not have the same instant recognition of Oxford, but I did believe in that it was going to be impactful in my career, which it was. I don't regret it, right? That place, I got a national scholarship, government scholarship पाएँ मैले, yeah, and I got a stipend जुन नेपालको मा it was around 30 lakhs stipend छुट्टै.
Oh, okay.
You know what I did with that money?
What?
I went on a त्यो DDLJ kind of Euro trip.
Hey.
Yeah, I completed my masters.
हजुर.
मास्टर्स गर्दा गर्दै यति पढ्नु पर्थ्यो होइन, एन्ड देन यु निड इन्सेन्टिभ नि त, अनि युगिच्छा पछि गएर युरोप डुल्नुपर्छ. सो द्याट अलवेज केप्ट मी इन चेक के होइन, केप्ट मी गोइङ. आफ्टर द्याट आई ट्राभल्ड अराउन्ड युरोप अन माई ओन मनी. या, and I also took people along. I was able to pay for them. Yeah, that, you know what, like that has translated into the kind of confidence that I think I have. And I imagine if I had gone to Oxford, then I would have gone into the Oxford, right?
Yeah.
And you would think that, you know, on the face value, you would have thought that that would have been a better decision. But not having that kind of financial burden,
Freedom, right?
and going to a meaningful place was a better decision for me in the long run, right? Now I'll compare that to the situation of many other people I know, and what loan does to you, right? Individual scale मा यो हुन्छ, you can think of, you can just US मै पनि एकदम बेला बेलामा यो student loan को कुरा आइरा हुन्छ नि. That does affect you. Like if you want to be a human right activist, there was one person जसको story was from the black community. She wanted to be a pro bono lawyer, completely full-time, full-fledged pro bono lawyer, but she had taken so much student loan that she had to work for these, corporate legal firms. So and it took her 10 years to clear her loan, and त्यसपछि मात्र she could pursue what she wanted to be her interest.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a very long time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, because loan.
Well, you talked about taking rash decisions. It reminds me of US printing 1 trillion coin, tinta, and giving it to the World Bank. That, on the face of it, it looked like such a stupid decision. But jokes apart. But let's a lot of formal stuff and serious thing. You talked about your college and Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law.
I did not mention that. Thank you.
And yeah, it's a dream university for a lot of us, including me. Like a lot of people dream into getting into the universities that you got into.
The acceptance rate of Geneva Academy is lower than that of Cambridge, Harvard, and Oxford.
My motivation at the moment.
No, but the quality they look for is not just the surfacial cut percentage matra hundaina ke. You might be someone who has like let's say 60% in your final examinations, but if you can demonstrate that you are interested and passionate about IHL, they will take you.
Right.
Yeah. So, I think that's how our policies should be dictated, pani ke. Not just looking at the percentage of a person. I know? Right.
I think it would be very good if that happened.
Yeah.
In regards to the Ozurko, the place you studied, right? Yet again, as I mentioned, like it's a dream university, or it's a dream place for a lot of us to, be there, study there, experience it. How was your experience there?
Right. So, well, first of all, just to clarify, you don't need to have you don't need to speak or know French, even the basics, to get into it. All right, they will have mentioned that if you understand French, if you can speak or write in French, that's an asset. They say that. And I was skeptical if I would get selected, or even after I got selected, I was very nervous about how my lack of French, obvious lack of French, would make any effect. But turns out it did not, because all the classes were in English, And that continues till date. The thing that I thought would be a problem for me was not a problem, but the thing that I thought would be easy for me turned out to be a problem, which was my knowledge of IHL, because I had done Henri Dunant. I done very well in Henri Dunant IHL Moot Court competition, which was named after the founder of the International Red Cross movement, Henri Dunant. So I did have practical knowledge of IHL. IHL is taught as a course in the bachelor's at Purvanchal University, which is not the case in many bachelor colleges around the world. Undergrad program ma bachelor's ma IHL धेरै ठाउँमा पढाइ हुँदैन, which is why KSL is very appreciated. In fact, PU is appreciated, for that matter. And so I did have formal training and practical knowledge of IHL. And in fact, when I did JESA, त्यति बेलामा पनि मेरो issue was IHL. So I did have some experience in IHL, although I had no field experience of IHL. I went there and I thought, I already have it covered.
Right.
Yeah, no, not at all. So it was very difficult. So we would have a lot of classes, and the teachers were, of course, like they were the few of the biggest names in IHL, and they did have these guest lectures, visiting professors or pani huन्थ्यो, right? So yeah, I had no complaints about the tutoring I was getting in IHL, right? The problem was the evaluation methodology. So हाम्रो के हुन्छ, हाम्रो in class descriptive questions हुन्छ mostly, right? So the kind of questions, just think about the kind of questions you get in your terminal and board examinations. That's the kind of evaluation methodology that I was brought up in, and I was accustomed to. And then I went there, and what happens is, like, now just imagine any moot court problem, so त्यो although हाम्रो चाहिँ 1.5 page को हुन्थ्यो, 1.5 page को moot court problem, you would have to solve it within 2 hours. And you were only allowed to take the basic materials, all right? And within 2 hours, you would have to prepare your legal solution, okay? एउटा public international law मा मात्र there was and not completely त्यहाँ पनि एउटा question descriptive थियो, all right? I remember the question was about the collective security system under the United Nations. That was the question. And I chose that, of course, because just the bani ke I had मैले सुरुमा भनेको थिएँ, Yugichha, don't choose that, go for the difficult one. के भन्छ त्यसलाई, push your limits, push your boundary. But I'm like, I succumbed. So I took that, but everything else was this problem solving orientation. Why? Because and they are justified in doing that. It's not just they want to be that academic bullies. Okay? No, that's not, that was not their intention. They wanted their products to be someone who can go to the field and use IHL to save lives. And when do you need IHL? कस्तो खालको situation मा चाहिन्छ IHL, where you need to think the law and think the solutions quickly. Not sympathetic nervous system मा हैन though, right? So they want to inculcate IHL, okay, in you, and you can only do that by, that rigorous, a very challenging, exam. So first, there were 2 semesters, total credit 6 hune, so harik subject ko 6 credit hune. I did not, I scored 5 in PIL. I scored 4 in IHL. 4 is just pass, by the way. Yeah. 4 was the pass marks out of 6. Yeah. तर उनीहरूले किन त्यस्तो राखे भन्दाखेरि anyone who gets 4 can go in the field and be a good IHL representative for whatever place you are working at. त्यो थियो के उनीहरूको चाहिँ. So pass literally meant pass के बुझ्यौ नि. So yeah, I barely passed भनौँ न. I got in aggregate 4.5 pi. Second semester मा I did good. Second semester मा I had to अरू विद्यार्थीहरूलाई, they could still go out on Friday night. They could still like go to these festivals and events which I was also looking forward to, but I could not, because just to compensate for my lack of knowledge, I had to also use those Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays to prepare for my coming week. यदि मैले त्यो सेमेस्टर सेकेन्ड सेमेस्टरमा त्यो नगरे भए हुनुहोस् आई माइट हेभ फेल्ड एन्ड आई वाज अ स्कलरसिप स्टुडेन्ट सो त्यो बर्डन पनि थियो कि हुन चाहिँ सानो बर्डन चाहिँ थियो त्यति बेलामा सो द्याट एन्ड वाट द्याट डिड इज द्याट वेन आई अनि त्यति बेलामा मलाई त्यसको भ्याल्यु थाहा थिएन है हाउ सिग्निफिकेन्ट इट वाज गोइङ टु बी इन माई लाइफ एन्ड I have been able to use the kind of training I got in Geneva Academy so much that I think मेरो करियरको सबैभन्दा ठुलो भ्यालिडेसन वाज मेरो टिचर मार्को ससोली आइएचएलको टिचर एन्ड this is actually true like we would read these international review of the Red Cross मा articles हरु हुन्थ्यो हैन for example like the typology of armed conflict भन्ने थियो एउटा हैन so we would be given these articles as reference materials for our classes right for every class we had to study around 2 cases and 3 to 5 of these articles for every class and so most of them would include these things and then Marco Sassoli he included my article in one of his reading materials. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So when he said and ICRC published my textbook in their pedagogical resources on IHL. What that means is IHL has this database, right, of law, and it also has database of teaching materials, and it includes teaching materials made by teachers on IHL around the world. And there's a vetting, and they vet and include materials which are good introductions on IHL. All right. So the materials developed by Geeta ma'am and I, they were included in this ICRC casebook. जसको चाहिँ यताबाट मेन लुक हेर्ने मान्छे इज मार्को ससोली के एन्ड जस्ट गेटिङ द्याट काइन्ड अफ रिकग्निसन फ्रम योर टिचर आई थिङ्क होइन
It's really
yeah
validating,
it
to
is.
say the least. As we approach to the end of the program, I'll keep the last 2 questions as a rapid fire.
Well, all right.
So, can you tell us about your favorite or most vivid memory of Dase or Tihar?
I used to do Deusi Boilo. I used to do, and I have been a dancer, so I remember dancing and getting a lot of money.
Oh, okay. That's a good one. What's a current book that you're reading?
I am reading Pasi Salberg भन्ने एकजना teacher, New Zealand को teacher, को this book called Flipping the System.
Flipping this. Would you recommend it to your students?
Not really. I would recommend it to the teachers though.
Okay.
Yeah, it tells about the how good a role teacher can play in like shaping the academic experience of their students.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am. That would bring us to the end of this podcast.
Thank you very much. It was fun.
It was fun too. We'll have you again, certainly, in the days to come. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am.